Well, hello, Sarah. Welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thanks, Cathy. It's really great to be back.
Yeah. I was telling you earlier, like your interview for my last summit got probably some of the most responses.
Cool.
Because definitely it was very juicy topic. So I'm very excited for you to share again about this topic.
Mm-hmm. I'm really excited to talk about it.
Yeah. So let's talk about pussies. Let's just jump into it.
We're just going to go straight in there. It's my style. It works for me. We're going to talk about empowered womanhood, and orgasmic birth, and meaningful careers, and how all of that really is derived from pleasuring and being with wonderful sensations and your sexuality in a healthy way. And that's all about us honoring our pussies.
Yeah. And I love how, it's, I think we compartmentalize because we are so in the brain and we think that all of those things are separate. All of those things can flow together when we what do we need to do to be in that flow where we're expressing and manifesting and going from creating from that creative potential that we have in our vaginas.
It's an interesting conversation because I think it's pretty clear that most women would raise their hand when they're asked, like, well, do you prioritize pleasure? And they would be like, probably not. A lot of our matriarchal, ancestral imprints, the examples we've seen is a lot of selflessness in our mothers constantly giving of themselves and taking care of the family and giving to the children and often depleting herself. Mm-hmm. I've realized that in going home to the Midwest where I'm from this summer, I recognize that there's actually like a bonding that happens around people, around complaining and around being depleted. There's almost like a
selflessness. It's a martyrdom.
Yeah, there's almost some sense of worth that people get from giving too much, essentially, from being needed so much, that conversation. And I want to turn that on its head, and because that's really a very disempowering way to live, and the story you're telling yourself that you need to give of yourself completely till exhaustion to be worth anything. It's really not true. In fact, I think the opposite is true, that if you build yourself up inside from a commitment to prioritizing pleasure in your life, there's a self-respect that shows up. There's a resourcefulness. There's an infinite expansiveness in your buffer to handle stress. And that's really what makes cohesive community. That's what makes a strong role model for your children. That's really what makes your partnership thrive and juicy and sexy, when you know how to take care of yourself. So I think that paradigm is shifting. I think that women are actually starting to realize that that's not okay, that was what they saw their parents do, and maybe they want to do something different. But the conversation goes like, okay, then what? Like, where do we look, and how does that happen? Right?
Yeah. It really is broken belief systems. I see it in my mom. I see it in, her not wanting to spend time, energy, anything on herself. And it was like she basically became this is how I see it, and of course I'm looking at it from the outside, but became a mom, and her life ended. Yeah. And then she's just waiting to retire now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I see it. And I realized when I went into motherhood, I kind of had adopted, I didn't realize it because it was subconscious, but I realized that I had that idea that mothers should be selfless. And then I was like, but wait a second, I'm pretty resentful. And like, what about me? What about me? I couldn't ignore that. And the more that I tried to ignore and repress that, it was like coming out of me, like out of every pores, into yelling at my husband, like being resentful as a mom, like all of this, but because I wasn't taking care of me.
Right.
And when I switched that, it was exactly as you said. When I took time to like, okay, I want to create, I want to, you know, do something for myself. I want to put myself first. Like, I don't feel like, you know, I need some space away from the baby or whatever it is. Then that's when I was able to give really without expectations, without resentment. That's when I was able to be with my partner more, even though, you know, still working on some stuff. but yeah, I totally agree. So then we get to the how.
Yeah.
Like, where do we turn?
So what often happens, I think what women often do, especially moms, is try to get their bodies feeling good, right? Mm-hmm. And that is a lot of through yoga, Pilates, working out, getting a personal trainer, running. Mm-hmm. And I think that in and of itself is a great thing. But when it's used as a tool to fix this hole that we think we have, then it becomes destructive. And oftentimes, because there's this striving and this effortfulness, your pussy gets tense.
Yeah.
Over Kegling. I mean, I could talk a whole nother story about the pelvic floor ramifications, but the thing is, being relaxed and being gentle with yourself and being soft in your pussy is actually way sexier than tight, gripped, tension-filled. Tight pussies aren't sexy. Yeah. Full body orgasms don't come from contracted pussies. They come from slow, expansive, relaxed bodies and pussies. And so the way to get there is to recognize that there aren't a bunch of exercises you need to do to fill that hole, like to take care of yourself. And in fact, most women are much better off slowing down to take care of themselves. And then, yes, you can go and work out, and you can have this experience in your body about getting fit, but it doesn't have to be about filling that void. Mm-hmm. There's a desperation that comes when we're like, I need to take care of myself, damn it, and I'm going to do all these things. And then it becomes like a checklist, and then tension is the end result. So I wanted to highlight that nuance about how that is kind of a little bit of a rat race. You just kind of wind yourself up instead of being more like expansive and present for your relationship, for your child, for yourself. So that whole grasping for it.
I see the same thing. I see that with women being so hard on themselves in terms of diet, in terms of practicing, as you say, practicing all of these things for this, like to achieve something, thinking that when they look a certain way, then they're going to be worthy of anything. Right. And it's also a very mental, rigid approach, just as you said.
Mm-hmm. And maybe it's like, for some women, it may not even be about this like underlying self-worth conversation. It may just be like this perfectionist tendency or belief, this unwillingness to be in need of taking care of, like having this Wonder Woman persona. Like there's a lot of ways in which we kind of sell ourselves short that way. I think that taking sensuality seriously and reclaiming the internal experience of feminine radiance is the ultimate way to find space in your life, to find flow, to find yourself in relationship with the most difficult people in your life, with buffer where you can stay in your self, where you can stay out of the destructive team players that show up, where you can stay centered in your best self. I call her the lioness in my body. She shows up as a lioness, and she's just got the pride taken care of. Yeah. I don't feel when I practice self-pleasure, self-care, that I'm jumping in, like sometimes I can manifest as a hyena, right? Sometimes I get stressed out and things wind me up, and then there's like sharp tones and hackles raised. But the process of dropping back into my lioness or my best self is just really a matter of understanding and recognizing that that's going on. And I have spent a lot of time remapping my internal landscape for pleasure. We are super wired for stress. Our nervous systems are really wired for that sympathetic nervous response. Most people don't know how to calm themselves down and self-soothe. Most people don't know how to get into their parasympathetic nervous system and relax and reconnect with that sense of everything's okay here. So that's really, really like the first thing that needs to happen is for people to get control of their nervous systems and slowing down and taking space for themselves like that. It's not to run out and do a bunch of extra stuff. So part of that is about claiming your right to be sensual. If you think about a lioness, when she's relaxing, their bellies are full, they're rolling around in the grass and they're feeling their bodies and feeling good in their bodies. Every animal on the planet allows themselves to do this. Babies do it. But for somewhere along our timeline, we've gotten the idea that that's really shameful. That being expressive of pleasure is really despicable and shameful, and slut shaming and everything happens there. We attract attention we don't want, and it's our fault that we got raped. That whole narrative has shut us down to not only allowing ourselves to feel like we have the right to feel pleasure, but like then if you have gotten there, you know how to self-pleasure, expressing that and allowing that to be okay. Really not very many role models happening. So I'm really passionate about demonstrating that and talking about that. And in a way, we just the conversation gives everybody so much permission. So really glad that I got a chance to be here to talk about this today.
Yeah.
We'll get into the why or the how in a minute. I want to talk a little bit more about this why part.
Okay.
As a doula, I saw a lot of traumatic experiences for women through their birth experiences and into that big transition into motherhood. Just to kind of tie this into the audience and why this is relevant.
Because we need a reason to feel pleasure. We just can't feel pleasure. We need to.
Gosh, we need to have an excuse. I mean, that is really at the heart of it. We need to have a good reason, which is, I mean, what kind of thing are you reflecting back to yourself when you say to yourself that you need a reason to feel good?
Yeah,
you actually should be stressed out most of the time instead. All of the cool thing about the way that my partner and I go about working with women in this work is that it's really fucking revealing. Can I say? It's really revealing because you come to understand that the stories that people have told you, the narrative that you've gotten inherited, the cultural blah, 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 patriarchy, just flush it all down the toilet, because at the end of the day, you're the one that's believing that. You're the one that's taking that in and continuing to perpetuate it in such subtle ways you don't recognize that you're doing it. But this thing you just said, this thing you brought up is a perfect example. And when you recognize that there's all these choices that you that you don't see that you're making, when you can slow down with those, there's a natural tendency for your body to just fall into this effortlessness, to like welcome pleasure, because that's how the body wants to exist. We're not meant to be built. We're not built for long-term stress. We're not built for feeling like a wet almond wanting to pop out of our skin. We're built for pleasure. We have neurological pathways all over the body that have just simply atrophied. So building the body back up, it's like, yes, we can talk about this, but it's super experiential. It takes it takes time for you to get into your nervous system and recalibrate and resensitize. And then there's a period of catharsis and trauma release and shaking all of that shit out of your body. And then there's an opportunity to re-imprint with pleasure and pleasure expansive exercises. This is kind of like how we do this. My partner, Cathy, and I have built a program around this whole like conversation about how to get from feeling like you don't feel anything in your body, feeling like sex is actually really dysfunctional and paralyzing, feeling really triggered by intense experiences, by intimacy, or like recognizing you're having all of these same patterns in your relationship that have to do with sex and sensuality, or you keep attracting men that are not a good fit for you. Like there's a whole bunch of ways you keep choosing jobs that ultimately give you a narrative about disempowerment that you can relax in, because that's all you know. Like you're not ready to challenge yourself past that. You're not really ready to take a leadership role. So you sort of self-sabotage by the jobs you choose. All of this comes down to deciding, making like one simple choice to decide that that's not how you want to treat yourself anymore, and taking a step towards figuring out how pleasure can be a priority. Because when you're prioritizing pleasure in your body, you're not looking for that outside of yourself. You feel good here. You don't have to get out of your body. You actually feel like you can be at home here. Mm-hmm. So many people don't feel good in their bodies. Mm-hmm. It's like not something we talk about at the dinner table, but a lot of people are full of pain and tension and constriction, and it's not natural. So when you get to that point where you recognize that you feel good in your body, you have so much mobility to go out and express. This is the kind of the buffer. Like you can go take a job that's a little bit outside of your comfort zone and challenge yourself. You can take initiative with your partner and ask for what you want sexually. Yeah. Most people also don't even know what they fucking want or what they like or what feels good. We've put that burden over there to these clumsy teenage boys who don't know anything about female anatomy and never learned. And then we just keep getting like yucky experiences. Like, I'm going to be super passionate about talking to teenagers at some point. I'm not ready to go there just yet, but this conversation that we learn about sex from a very young age is all about giving our like, okay, I receive, I don't get to ask or call in. It's not a two-way conversation in most people's sexual relationships. And that again is just like reintegrating this disempowering narrative in our physical bodies. So
asking our birth practitioners, asking our doctors, or not even asking, just being like, this is what I want. This is what I want for my birth. But there's always this, we feel this hierarchy. This is the doctor and they're going to do stuff to you. And you just kind of accept it because they know more than you do about your own body. And it's all tying into.
And for a lot of women, that's true because they have not gotten in touch with their body. And it seems like a daunting task. It's really not. Once you turn yourself inward and toward yourself, we've developed this program that just like zoom in a matter of 6 weeks, you know how to speak the language of your body. That's so monumental. It affects everything in your life. And of course, your sex life is super awesome when you know how to feel good in your body and you know how to create even better feelings and you know how to channel that and you know how to expand into that. It's a platform for joy and happiness. And it's such a taboo for some reason. I don't understand why people aren't talking about this more often, but I think it's a super relevant and potent straight arrow doorway into the heart of the conversation around women's empowerment. So I started talking about these traumatic birth experiences that I saw, and I recognized like over the course of working with these women in the postpartum period and stuff, that there was not a lot of embodiment and in a felt sense of empowerment going into that birth experience that caused them to doubt themselves and give their power away to their other practitioners and create a lot of tension for themselves through the birth process instead of opening up to it. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say how you orgasm is really, really indicative of how you're going to birth. If you're relaxing into and softening into, and you can orgasm in your entire body from the contrast to like, okay, it's coming. I feel a sensation right there in my certain spot in my pussy, and I'm going to grab onto it, and I'm going to clench until I have a super localized mediocre orgasm, and that's going to be the best of it. Two very different experiences, and the opportunity to drop into and expand into that innate sense of pleasure in your body is available to every woman. It's just like we haven't been taught how to actually do that. So we're doing that in a program, and it's pretty cool. Our first group of people have gone through, and the kinds of responses that I'm getting from people are just mind-blowing. The way that they have totally turned around their sex life with their relationship, had nothing to do with fixing their partner, getting pregnant really fast after trying for 5 years, infertility conversations that just are done because it's like the whole conversation shifted completely. And the sense of being really at home in their skin, like this home base, this place you have to exist in. If you want to get the hell out of there all the time, that's a lot of distraction. So being able to stay in here and feel good in your body on demand. I'm not talking about walking around and having orgasms all the time. I'm talking about just being comfortable and healthy, feeling good inside.
Not having to drink or overeat or smoke or overexercise or being too busy is another one. Or, all of these coping mechanisms that we need to just be in the day because we can't be with ourselves.
Yeah. Netflix binge, I think social media and the way that everybody is really, I don't know a single person who's not even sort of addicted to Facebook on some level. And really, I think it depresses us. It kind of like gives us this rush, this dopamine hit, but we're also like self-betraying a little, and there's some yuckiness there. And that, imagine like having a blissed out body and a sense of self-empowerment, and then engaging in Facebook as another way to give yourself pleasure. Like it's just a simple shift. The things people are really afraid about going in and discovering their inner experience of pleasure and radiance are like, what if I can't? What if I don't find anything? What if there's nothing there? Yeah. Or what if there's too much? Yeah. What if I can't handle that? What if I'm I've been told my whole life I'm too much, I'm too bossy, I'm too, what if I can't integrate into the rest of my life? What if I find out that my partner and I aren't compatible? Like there's a lot of ways in which we make excuses for not coming home. And I'm saying that the thing you're afraid of, the thing that people think is this really big monster in the room, is not. It's such an easy, simple, beautiful process of just dropping all the bullshit. Our program, we've spent 2 years putting this together, and over 10 years of working with clients and researching this work with people one-on-one has given us the capacity to really solidify and simplify some really simple concepts in a very experiential way that makes those fears seem obsolete. You just have to be at the point where you're done plateauing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That process takes time for some people. And yeah, sometimes I don't want to demonize the ways in which we cope, because our coping mechanisms keep us sane. They're not bad. It's a very intelligent way in which we take care of ourselves, actually. But at a certain point, you recognize, you see that pattern looping, and you're like, that's old. There's something new. That if that's right there, if you're right there in your sex life, if you're right there in your business, if you're right there with your like experience of motherhood or the way you're relating to people, now you're ready. It's just like, you have to make that, be at that I'm done place for that plateau to blast. Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit into the potentiality of, I mean, we've been talking about it, but the potentiality of that's in the pussy for birth, the potentiality of an orgasmic birth, in the experience itself, and perhaps in that transition to motherhood and what you've seen.
Everybody has a potential for orgasmic birth. I'm just going to go ahead and say that. There's not a certain gene. There's not a certain size or shape cervix. Like, none of that is true. There's nothing anatomically or physiologically stopping any woman. There's a lot of thought patterns and belief patterns that she may choose that might prevent having an orgasmic birth or an empowered birth. And that's kind of what I was touching on earlier with that comment about going all the way into trauma. Did you know you can have cervical orgasms?
I did, yeah.
I don't think a lot of people realize that. Yeah.
For tantric school. They told me 7 types of orgasms.
There's a lot of ways the pussy can promote pleasure for you, and the general region, like even your skin. This comes back to the conversation about sensitization and therefore desensitization. I think we don't recognize how early on most of us just shut down. Like, not even through the most extreme reasons you might imagine, like sexual trespass and abuse rates are insane. Most women experience something like that in their life at some point. But just more simply and more subtly, the way that sex culture has exposed us to that, like I was saying earlier, the sex shaming, like that shutting us down, the desensitization is the beginning of the end there for the potential for everybody to have empowered birth experiences. That's not to say it's permanent, and that's also not to say that it takes a lot of work to undo that. It's actually really simple and joyful, but there are it's like building a muscle. Everybody has a different rate, a different like trajectory towards expansion. It takes time. Like once you get an insight, like you might have a pretty powerful insight from this interview, but that's not going to be the thing that gets you to having, orgasms on demand or like getting you to an orgasmic birth. No, there's actually quite a bit of re-imprinting and rewiring neurologically in your physical body that you need to do to experience that. And that's kind of like what I think is at the heart of something that everybody can do to start doing that. I can give a little, like, here's my number one tip. Yeah. Yes, you should definitely join the Sensual Body Reset program, but also you can do a lot of work with your own internal massaging and de-armoring. So the pussy is this magical place. When a woman feels constricted anywhere about anything, generally the root of it's right there at her center, in her core, in her womb and pussy. Grip up like that. And we don't realize it. We walk around like that most of our lives, and the blood flow is shut down. Energetically, we're blocked. There's nothing getting in. Like, yes, there's no bad feelings and bad experiences. We shut down the pain, but we also shut down the other end of the spectrum to sensitizing ourselves to pleasure and to feeling good there. So I recommend all of my clients to start doing a sensual internal pussy massages. And you can do this with your hands. Ideally, you get to know and sensitize your fingertips in your own skin, and you start real slow and you set your stage with some good music and some relaxing breathing first, perhaps. And then And then it's really easy to get super clinical about this. And okay, I'm going to go over here and rub on this. But just mostly because we feel insecure about touching ourselves. So be okay with that, having that experience for yourself, and stay with the process, even if it's super triggering at first, because there's so much to unlock, not just physically, but you'll find yourself. So I do this work with clients. I do internal de-armoring for my clients when we have a capacity to work one-on-one. And oh my God, so much emotion comes up, and visual experiences of memories of childhood, things that were buried and forgotten about. When we start to resensitize, it may feel like pretty intense at first. There may be a fair amount of scary feelings and memories coming through. But the cool thing is like that unlocks both ends of the spectrum when you just go there and hold space for yourself. So you just, as a byproduct, recognize that you can feel and sense more. And the first session might not be like opening you up to full body orgasms right away. But after time, you spend time in there and touching and resensitizing and releasing that constriction and being with whatever shows up. You demonstrate self-care in a way that most people don't actually understand, this ability to self-soothe when you're ready to go through the gauntlet of those tough emotions and take care of yourself through that process. It's really affirming and empowering. So there's a layer of like self-knowing and self-love that shows up, along with all this new like capacity for experiencing sensation and eventually pleasure. So the pussy has a crazy palate. And when she's a little bit upset and tense, you maybe have really strange symptoms from that, like headaches and teeth grinding and scary dreams and a lot of irritability and anger that doesn't seem to know where to go. And we're basically kind of cut off from our composting system, our emotional like recycling center there in the womb. So when a woman unlocks her pussy, I mean, the physical aspect of it has ramifications for every like onion layer inside of her. All of a sudden, she can speak to her kids with more patience. Her husband's triggering comments don't trigger her anymore. Like, she sees the care behind the things people say. She's able to manage stress levels in a constructive way. She's happy to be in her skin. She walks around with her heart open and her eyes bright and eye contact and real engagement with people. Like the things we crave, we feel so alone. Oftentimes it all stems down to this disassociation and this kind of like shut down from the pussy. So
yeah, that was so
that's
powerful.
what I think is possible.
So simple and so powerful, because I do notice that sometimes just this disconnection with other people. Well, I mean, you know, I feel like I do try to be connected, but sometimes people, they don't make eye contact with me. They're not there. They're not like willing to look at me in the eyes. And like, yeah, just let's connect.
They're just scared. There's something inside of themselves that's scaring the shit out of them.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
I know it's really easy to be like, well, I'm showing up. Why aren't you? And getting a little bit irritable about that, because we are thirsty for connection, even if we're scared. Like, just show up, stop hiding. But there's a part of us when we get into states like that we think we're the only ones, and that it's super shameful to be alive like that. It's basically it's something to be. I have found a lot of compassion for in myself when I show up like that through the process of opening up this way, because that's all it is. It's not personal.
Yeah.
They're just suffering. They're creating their own suffering, but
yeah. We do it in other ways too, like not allowing there to be silence, not allowing just not allowing, trying to control, trying to be busy, trying Not allowing
Mm-hmm.
there to be space in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Slowing down and prioritizing pleasure totally saves you from burnout in every area of your life, at work, at home, in your health. I think it's a cure-all.
Yeah.
Pussy's magical.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So,
you have a free gift for us today, and I would love for you to share that. Yeah.
So, the Sensual Body Reset program is a 6-week program that my partner and I have developed together. It's really cool because it has a masculine and feminine representation, not just in our own personal energies, but in the two of us doing it together. Yeah. He's one of the most powerful women's empowerment coaches I've ever come across. I've grown exponentially since we've been together, and I feel really honored to have been able to co-create this super powerful program for people. The Sensual Body Reset program is exactly what I've described as this process of resetting your nervous system and resensitizing yourself and getting into this place where you can slow down, see where you're holding tension and constriction in your body, and go into it to metabolize it. And then at that point, you are able to open up and resensitize and reintegrate and remap yourself for pleasure. It's sort of like a 1-2 punch. And it's super experiential. It's really simple. It doesn't require a whole bunch of homework and watching stuff and journaling. I mean, it works, and it's to the point, and it's really therapeutically focused and a whole body integrated. We think it's a totally awesome, complete program. Mm-hmm. We've both spent a lot of time talking about different aspects in tantric, in the tantric world, and pelvic floor and health and birth and death and the whole thing. Our like skill sets. It's pretty cool how we've been able to blend everything together. So I'm really excited.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Cathy.
Thank you for the wisdom and the permission.
Yeah. Permission for sure is like the defining thing here, is giving yourself the permission to feel fucking awesome, giving yourself the permission to ask for what you want and receive it, giving yourself permission to disappoint people because you don't want to self-sabotage, giving yourself permission to be bold and big and make people a little bit uncomfortable sometimes because that's your fucking expression. Giving people permission to just stop capping their self-expression in every way is ultimately about freedom. And I think that that's something that everybody really feels trapped in some way in their life. And the Sensual Body Reset program is a ticket into freedom in a felt experiential way that is better than 10 years of talk therapy, because it's anchored in your body and integrated in a short period of time. And then all of that just melts away. You don't need to know why you feel constricted. You don't need to talk about your 15 years of misery. You can just transform it now and move forward and grow. So if you're feeling like that plateau is ready to be blasted through and you don't know how to do it, but you know you want to, we got the thing for you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me be a part of this. I'm really super honored.